Well, thank you so much, Joanna, and the Innovation Network for this opportunity. My name is Danish, and as Joanna said, I work with the DPPA Innovation Cell, which is kind of a new outfit that's piloting new technologies, new approaches to meet the on-the-ground needs of UN peacemakers. So I'll try to, in my presentation, I'll be very quick. I'll try to stick to, sorry, 1 second. 10 minutes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions afterwards and try to keep it as interactive. So basically, we're going to talk about what the problem was, what we were trying to address, why we chose VR as a possible solution, the impact and the lessons learned. I won't go into as much detail as our IAEA colleagues who did an amazing job. I mean, just watching what was built was so exciting. I wanted to try it immediately. I'll kind of maybe go at a slightly higher level and let you ask questions when the time is appropriate. So this is an image perhaps some of you might recognize, as others not. Generally, when I present this image in-person gatherings, I ask people, can you guess where this is? And most times people can't guess where it is. And it's the Christian Quarter in Mosul, Iraq. Mosul, of course, as many of you know, was the capital of ISIS when it established its so-called caliphate in Iraq and Syria. And I guess I'm giving this example also because I worked on Iraq closely for about 3 years prior to jumping ship and ending up in the innovation team now. Now, what was the problem? So generally, generally, when it comes to this sort of situation where we're trying to have people understand what is going on in a particular conflict context, there isn't really a way to get senior decision makers, whether council members or even senior UN principals, to really have a feel for what it's like to be on the ground. And generally the way that they understand what the situation might be or how we brief them is in the form of a Security Council report, which many of you know already is Times New Roman font, 12 points, standard, 30, 40 pages, and speaking quite frankly, how given all the other demands on the average diplomat's time, how deeply or how closely can they read a council report? Of course, we hope that everyone does, but really, aside from the fact that it doesn't give you a real sense of what it's like to be on the ground, it's also a question of, how much are you able to absorb given everything else you're reading? That's kind of the background and kind of, the problem we were trying to solve for. And we realized in thinking this way that, essentially when it comes to senior decision makers, while required to make consequential decisions because of security reasons, because of financial reasons, because of logistical reasons, they don't necessarily get a chance to go into conflict zones. Now, that being the case, what did we do? Basically, we decided that we would instead create a 360 video, and I'll get into that in a second. Can you guys still see my screen, by the way?
Yes.
Great, wonderful. So I'm going to play a little bit of the 360 video we created by going to Iraq.
There's no sound, Dinesh, right?
There is. You can't hear the sound.
We cannot hear the sound, but you can talk
over
the sound if you like.
No problem. So this is basically the Al Shifa hospital, which was kind of the headquarters of the ISIS caliphate in Mosul. It offered a strategic vantage point over the city, and it received a lot of artillery fire and demolition. And you can see this is the old city, and you can see the scale of the destruction here that took place in Mosul. In addition to that, you also see when you go through this video, you also see aspects of the old city that need rebuilding. This is To go back to what I was talking about earlier, the question corridor in Mosul, Iraq, you also see the scale of the destruction. And this is essentially what we produced in collaboration with UNAMI. I'll pause here and I'll go back to my presentation. So this is and once it was done, with help from the Permanent Mission of Germany, we were able to host an actual informal meeting of the council during which we showed people at the expert level, but also one permanent representative actually showed up, what it was like to, what the actual work. Now, in that context, the reaction that the council members had was extremely powerful. Many of them had never been to Iraq. Indeed, a few months later, we did go to Iraq, and I know that because I helped organize and lead that mission. It was the first time that we went to Iraq, and so in a way, it helped prime them for Iraq. But even when we did go, I have to add here and stress that once we were on the ground, we were just going from ministry to palace to parliament to the UN compound. And even then, within our armored sort of convoy, we didn't really get a sense for what it's like to be on the ground. So when we showed this, in April at the German mission, council members reacted very positively. They said, given the fact that we were covering different issues, there are different issues that we're seized of, that we get reports for generally on a quarterly basis. Can we get immersive experiences for all those reports? Can we get some kind of immersive supplemental briefing materials for all those issues? And as a result of that, this also helped justify the creation of the unit that I'm now working at, including through extra budgetary funding from member states. That's focused on applying innovative methods to the on-the-ground needs of UN peacemakers. And in that regard, currently we're working on a number of VR projects, including potentially on the situation in Yemen, in Lebanon, and on another report that's about to come out that we're actually collaborating with Gabo on. I know that I don't have that much time left. I have about 3 minutes left. I just wanted to, kind of say here that, of course, you've seen a couple of examples today over the course of the various presentations. When it comes to virtual reality, just as a more formalistic definition, it can be real-world content, or what I would call 360 video, as we saw in the Iraq 360 example, or it can be computer-generated content, which is kind of the example that Theo was showing by the IAEA. Now, so I talked a little bit about the impact that our little experiment with Iraq 360 has had in terms of building support, in terms of even the creation of a new unit inside DPPA that's focused on innovation. But the other thing that we've started to play around with is augmented reality. Now, augmented reality is an overlay of computer-generated content on the real world. And we thought that this was a really interesting technology in terms of complexifying a lot of the printed material. Many of you know that, at the UN, we produce a lot of reports, we produce a lot of, stuff that's physical, tangible, that gets handed to member states, handed to senior UN principals. And so how can we complexify the amount of information and overlay that information? And so in that regard, with our colleague Benjamin, who's a part of the innovation cell, we've created this sort of augmented reality postcards. Now, if you, I know that a number of you downloaded the Artivive app on your phones, and if you put the Artivive app on top of these postcards, you will see an actual visualization. I'll stick to this one since we're pressed for time, but this is basically a postcard about the Colombia mission, the verification mission that is currently being run to kind of verify action on the peace agreement with the FARC. And if you put your phone on it in the Artivive app that uses your camera, you'll actually see all the areas where a UN presence has been established, and you'll get some extra information. Similarly, just as an example, we're also doing that with SG reports now, where if you put your camera on this particular photograph or image, that'll trigger the Artivive app to show additional information, including for this particular report, how money has been spent over 3 years on peace building as part of the Peace Building Fund, and how much was programmatically allocated to programs on gender. And so you know, I hope that you guys found it useful. The title slide basically that I showed at the beginning, I'm at 10 minutes precisely now. I just wanted to say that the title slide that you saw right at the beginning was images from this particular spacecraft that was taking pictures of Saturn, in case you're wondering. I always like to show images from space since I'm a space nerd. But that's it from my side. I'll end here and I'll hand over back to Joanna to see if there are any questions.